everyone, welcome back to Unique History, where we're gonna open our pages to a new chapter and a new story and a new figure in history to talk about today. We're sticking with some of the French theme, apparently, where we looked at Joan of Arc last time we did this episode, and now I have some interest about Marie Antoinette and her life and who is she. And you know, we've got all these things going on about, like, we've heard all these rumors and, like, crazy things about her. And, well, we're going to learn if any of that is, like, yeah, just to see if it's true or not. So, why don't we dive down into Marie Antoinette and her life, where all of us are going to learn more about her. And I must apologize for any noises you hear today, because I am currently in the middle of recording a bunch of things while my friend is traveling to come visit me. Hi, Spam. Yes, I'm recording this as you are updating me on your arrival to airports and things. So I will apologize in advance if you hear any vibrating or there's any pauses in reading. I'm playing mom friend today, and that's just what matters. So we're going to dive right into Marie Antoinette, though, and learn more about her life and her relationship with King Louis XVI. So we're going to find out more about her. Let's begin. I am on history.com. That's the website I'm using. So, of course, I'll put that in the description below for you to look at and read and follow along with. But fair warning, as I read along, I will be pausing to react and to talk a little bit, because I know a bit about Marie Antoinette and her life and her history from my own studies and personal interests. So I will be reacting and pausing throughout. So that's just my little warning to you there. And yeah, well, let's begin. Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette was born in Vienna, Austria in 1755. She married the future French King Louis XVI when she was just 15 years old. So only 15, but think of the year, the time period, 1755. If you've watched Bridgerton or any time period classics, you'll know that a lot of women, when they turn of age, so 13, 14, 15, 16, in their like early to late teens, will get married to try to improve their class and their rank and all that kind of stuff. So her being married to Louis the 16th nowadays would be like, what? 15? No, too young. But back in that time period, it was actually appropriate and supposed to be what happens. So continuing onwards, the young couple soon came to symbolize all of the excesses of the reviled French monarchy, and Marie Antoinette herself became the target of a great deal of vicious gossip. This is where her infamy begins, is with this gossip. And again, what they mean by like the symbolizing of all excesses of the reviled French monarchy is because they went above and beyond spending means, basically. They didn't budget, they didn't take care of their finances, they really just went all out and had everything lavish and beautiful and excessive, and things like catered in gold, because they wanted to show their class and their monarchy and their level of power in society that way. And it led to a whole bunch of stuff. So we're going to find out more about that today. So after this great vicious mockery, or if it's just gossip, not mockery, that's a spelling dandy, my bad. But after the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789, the royal family was forced to live under the supervision of revolutionary authorities. So like Robespierre and those big figures in the French Revolution, which we'll be looking into after this episode, more French figures in history. So they're put under supervision of revolutionary authorities. In 1793, the king was executed. So King Louis XVI executed in 1793. Then Marie Antoinette was arrested and tried for trumped-up crimes against the French Republic. She was convicted and sent to the guillotine on October 16, 1793, a few months after her husband. That was a very quick overview of her life. We're going to go into a lot more details now with each category. So each category is early life, life at Versailles, French Revolution, the Terror, the Reign of Terror, and Marie Antoinette legacy, what was left behind from her life. Let's begin with early life. So Marie Antoinette, the 15th child of Holy Roman Emperor Francis I and the powerful Habsburg Empress Maria Theresa, was born in Vienna, Austria in 1755, an age of great instability for European monarchies. Why? So why would they put a sentence like that, like great instability of European monarchies? I'll do a little bit of some flashback to everyone for their history means and needs. People in Europe at this time were getting a little frustrated. All of the decisions and all of the power and all of these things that were happening to them, like famine and poverty and just a lot of struggles, were being handled by a single person, a king. Sometimes the king was influenced by the queen, we know this, but anyway, all the decisions were being made by this king and his court. It wasn't someone who cared about the people per se, it was just caring about looking good or having like a good reputation. And so decisions that were being made weren't really benefiting everyone, they were always benefiting the royalty or the nobility or the, like those kinds of people. And so there's growing frustration and anger towards having these aristocracies and these monarchies across Europe. Because in Europe in this time, we had like the French kingdom, we had a kingdom in England, we've got like Prussia and like Germany and Austria, like all of these kingdoms basically, ruling all of these people, but not always in their favor. And that led to a lot of frustrations, and the French Revolution really kicked off a lot of the anger and frustration and showed other countries in Europe that, hey, we can rebel. We can revolt against the king. We can set up a different government. And a lot of stuff happened after that point, which I won't get into. But she was born kind of amongst all of this growing frustration. It took a while for the revolution to actually begin in France. But it was this growing period of like anger and frustration, and she was born amongst the middle of it. To, obviously, a high-class family. Like, she was a child of the Holy Roman Emperor, Francis I, and her mother was a Habsburg Empress. She was already royal, and kind of part of that scene where people were already angry with her, or angry with that status. Okay? Just wanted to explain that context a little bit, just in case people are like, why are people mad at, like, why is the monarchy unstable in 1755? That's why. Okay. My little nerdy hat will continue. In 1766, 11 years later, as a way to cement the relatively new alliance between the French and Habsburg thrones, Maria Theresa promised her young daughter's hand in marriage to the future King Louis XVI of France. 4 years later, Marie Antoinette and the Dauphin? Can't know how to say the word. It's not dolphin like D-O-L-P-H-I-N. It's Dauphin like D-A-U-P-H-I-N. There we go. So 4 years later, Marie Antoinette and the Dauphin were married by proxy in Vienna. So they were 15 and 16 years old, and they had never met at that point. So they were just married, even having not seen each other or talked to each other ever before. They were married by proxy in Vienna. Then, 4 years after that, in May 16th, 1770, a lavish second wedding ceremony took place in the Royal Chapel at Versailles. More than 5,000 guests watched as the two teenagers were married. It was the beginning of Marie Antoinette's life in the public eye. A little context there. Why would they have a second wedding? Why would they get married again despite having been married in Vienna? This time period again with royal weddings and marriages. Sometimes they would just have a wedding at the king's place where the king was ruling or where they lived. But with their marriage being very young, they only had a small wedding to begin with in Vienna where the Empress was to show faith, like to show good faith of their reunion. Then 4 years later, when they're a little older and King Louis XVI had actually taken the throne and become the King of England, or become the become the king of France, they needed to have another wedding again to show the public, to show all of France that King Louis does have a queen, and this is what will happen. This is their relationship, and have to display it to the public to show that they are united, that they are a couple, and that they are together. So it's all a PR stunt, basically, if you think about it. It's all public relations and what they look like and how they are perceived by the people. That's why they had a second wedding. Just to add more historical context there for all of you listening. Now, they always have these little, like, did you know statements on the history.com articles, and I love them a lot, so I'm going to do this one with you, because this is something I wanted to know for, like, a long time, and now I'm like, yes, we get to know the answer to this. So did you know there is no evidence that Marie Antoinette ever said that starving peasants should eat cake if they had no bread? In fact, the story of a fatuous noblewoman who said, "Let them eat cake," appears in the philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions, which was written around 1766, when Marie Antoinette was just 11 years old. So there's always this kind of like rumor, sorry. I just need to respond back to my friend who's traveling, so that's the little pause there. Basically, so we've always heard the rumors and the facts and the interest that Marie Antoinette was the one who said starving peasants should eat cake, and would like yell out that phrase, "Let them eat cake," if they were starving. So that's why the French Revolution, one of the reasons why it started, was because there's huge, what's it called? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Inflation. Inflation was huge in France, and the cost of bread skyrocketed. And suddenly people were not able to afford bread or food, and were really suffering, like poverty, famine level suffering. And in response to that, like to their suffering, a lot of people thought Marie Antoinette would say, "Let them eat cake if they're starving." But in reality, no, she did not ever say that. It was actually written in a different piece of writing, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions, where it was said there, not from her, because she was too young to have said it, or to be a part of public affairs then. So just clarifying that little rumor and fact up with everyone. Now we get to know more about her life at Versailles. So as the Queen of France, we get to know a little bit about her life as the Queen. So life as a public figure was not easy for Marie Antoinette. Her marriage was difficult, and as she had very few official duties, she spent most of her time socializing and indulging her extravagant taste. For example, she had a model farm built on the palace grounds so that she and her ladies-in-waiting could dress in elaborate costumes and pretend to be milkmaids and shepherdesses. That's how bored she was. No other formal responsibilities with like the court or with her husband or with her king or with the ruling the land. She built this basically playset for her and her ladies-in-waiting to have fun and dress up and mess around a bit. She also had other extravagant tastes. So she would do a lot of like shopping, or like have a lot of things tailor-made to her and her dresses and her things. She just dressed extravagantly. She just really enjoyed that kind of materialistic life. And this caused some rumors to be spread. So for example, widely circulated newspapers and inexpensive pamphlets poked fun at the Queen's prolific behavior and spread outlandish, even pornographic rumors about her. Before long, it had become fashionable to blame Marie Antoinette for all of France's problems. We gotta break that down a little bit now, don't we? So, the French public just made fun of her. They didn't see her as a figure in power or having control over anything. All that they saw her as is someone who just spent money, who just spent a lot of money on very new dresses, very expensive food, expensive jewelry, necklaces, rings, always having her hair done in a specific way. And they really blamed a lot of Frances' problems on her because, again, money was a huge issue during this time period. A lot of people couldn't afford the basic necessities, and to be able to see the Queen parading herself around in all of these lavish expenses and materials and jewelry, it's pretty easy to pick someone like that to throw all your hatred towards, or to throw all your anger towards. And it caused all these pamphlets and newspapers to write awful things about her, and would dress her down instead of dress her up, in the sense of the pornographic stuff. So she was a pretty big figure that was used for the centrality of France's hatred, or the people of France's hatred towards the monarchy and the rulership, and no respect or control or anything like that of their expenses, or helping the people out with their expenses either. Now we hit the French Revolution. This is the next period where we get to focus on a lot in her life and her role in the French Revolution. In fact, the nation's difficulties were not the young queen's fault entirely. 18th century colonial wars, particularly the American Revolution, in which the French had intervened on behalf of the colonists, had created a tremendous debt for the French state. The people who owned most of the property in France, such as the Catholic Church and the nobility, generally did not have to pay taxes on their wealth. Ordinary people, on the other hand, felt squeezed by high taxes and resentful of the royal family's conspicuous spending. So France played a huge role in helping the Americans win their revolution against Britain. Again, England, France, not very good friends for a lot of history, and so the French saw this as an opportunity to again go against the British in the new land, of course, North America, and to try to win favor over there, but it cost them a lot of money, again, sailing ships over, equipment, people, resources, and it put them into a lot of debt. And instead of charging the rich, they charged the poor, the regular working class. And that's where a lot of anger came in, and that's where they were really tight with finances. So Louis XVI and his advisors tried to impose a more representative system of taxation, but the nobility resisted. The popular press blamed Marie Antoinette for this. She was known as Madame Veto, among other things, though she was far from the only wealthy person in France to defend the privileges of the aristocracy. So they put her down as Madame Veto to having this representative system, because again, if you have the whole world at your fingertips, you're able to afford anything and everything you can ever imagine, you wouldn't want to get that up. You wouldn't want to give it up. You don't want to hang on to it and live that lifestyle for as long as you can. So again, she was already in the public eye. She was already seen as this person of wealth and materialistic means. They then nicknamed her Madame Veto because they thought she was the only one saying no to this new system of taxation. When in reality, it was a lot of the nobility, a lot of the bureaucratic members of society who said no. In 1789, then, representatives from all three estates, so the clergy, the nobility, and the common people, met at Versailles to come up with a plan for the reform of the French state. But noblemen and clergymen were still reluctant to give up their prerogatives, their gains, their wealth. The third estate delegates, so the common people, inspired by the Enlightenment ideas and personal liberty, civic equality, those things, they formed a national assembly that placed government in the hands of the French citizens for the first time. So they decided to take matters into their own hands and create this national assembly that would replace the monarchy, or the monarch system of rule and power. At the same time, conditions worsened for ordinary French people, and many became convinced that the monarchy and the nobility were conspiring against them. Marie Antoinette continued to be a convenient target for their rage. Cartoonists and pamphleteers depicted her as an Austrian whore, doing everything she could to undermine the French nation. In October of 1789, a mob of Parisian women protesting the high cost of bread and other goods marched to Versailles, dragged the entire royal family back to the city, and imprisoned them in the Tuileries, which is the prison, kind of jail system there. In June 1791, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette fled to Paris and headed for the Austrian border, where, rumor had it, the Queen's brother, the Holy Roman Emperor, waited with troops ready to invade France, overthrow the revolutionary government, and restore the power of the monarchy and the nobility. This incident, it seemed to many, was proof that the Queen was not just a foreigner, she was also a traitor. So it led for more rage and more anger towards her after this plan was revealed and their escape was revealed. They saw her now as a traitor of France at that point. Then came the Reign of Terror. So at this point, the French Revolution has kicked off. They dragged the royal family out of Versailles, the revolutionaries took over, and people were now very radicalized. If you did not follow the new National Assembly or their beliefs or what they were doing to make France great again, for lack of better phrasing or language, you were targeted, and it became more and more violent and more gruesome if you were against the National Assembly or the new revolutionary force that was in power. This would lead to the Reign of Terror, where the violence escalated, guillotines were built, and people were executed regularly if they were seen as a dissenter. It led to a lot of death, a lot of violence, and a lot of extremism at this point. And some people, again to this day, think that that's absolutely what was needed to turn things around. Other people were saying that they took it way too far. They should have just implemented what they wanted to do, give the people what they needed, and try to maintain that power for as long as possible. But they took it a step or two too far in many people's eyes. For me, I see it on both sides. I can see the desperation. I can see how people were starving, were angry, were upset, wanted to get rid of all these people, wanted to start over again. I can see it. I understand it. Can you imagine not being able to afford bread? Or food? Or even have water or the strength to work because you're so hungry? It would lead to desperation. It would lead to those big things happening. Do I think they took it far? After a while. After a little while. Because this revolution took many years. I think they could have settled down a little bit and not have gone as far as they did. But naturally, a lot of anger, a lot of fuel, a lot of power, a lot of greed lead people to do things, and I get it, but I also don't get it at the same time. But let's learn about Marie Antoinette and her role in the Reign of Terror. So the royal family was returned to Paris, and Louis XVI was restored to the throne. However, many revolutionaries began to argue that the most insidious enemies of the state were not the nobles, but the monarchs themselves. In April 1792, partly as a way to test the loyalties of the king and queen, the Jacobin, radical revolutionary government, declared war on Austria. The French army was in a shambles, and the war did not go very well. A turn of events that many blamed on the foreign-born queen instead of the Jacobean revolutionary government. In August, another mob stormed the Tuileries, overthrew the monarchy, and locked the family in a tower. In September, revolutionaries began to massacre royalist prisoners by the thousands. One of Marie Antoinette's best friends, the Princesse de Lamballe, was dismembered in the street, and revolutionaries paraded her head and body parts throughout Paris. In December, Louis XVI was put on trial for treason, and in January of 1793, he was executed. The campaign against Marie Antoinette likewise grew stronger after that point. In July 1793, she lost custody of her young son, who was forced to accuse her of sexual abuse and incest before a revolutionary tribunal. That's awful. I didn't realize that. That's pretty bad. I knew about her best friend being dismembered in the streets. That's why I said, like, again, people are going to argue that they needed to go this far. They needed to dismember the princess, and, like, the ladies, like, they needed to do this. They needed to slay them and massacre them just to prove a point and get their point across. I get it, but to parade a head and body parts through the town, and to make someone's own child accuse their mom of these things, I don't know, it seems a bit much for me. But they made the kid do it. They made the kid do that. So then in October of 1793, she was then convicted of treason and sent to the guillotine. At this point, she was only 37 years old. Brutal stuff. French Revolution, guys, if you really want to deep dive on some crazy stuff that's happened in history, it's a good place to go. French Revolution will surprise you with, like, Robespierre, the Jacobins, everything. It gets wild. It's my favorite part of history to look at, because I'm just like, whoa, these people were angry? Holy shit. We're really angry. But let's look at Marie Antoinette's legacy. Obviously, we hear a lot of the people chose her as a target, blamed her. You heard, like, words that she was a foreigner, she committed treason, she was this fashionista, this other awful words that you call a woman, and just kind of used her as a target. And then they did all these things to her at the end. So what was her legacy? What did she leave behind? Some of that awful stuff, or was there a more positive spin to her life? Let's see. So the story of revolution and resistance in 18th century France is a complicated one, and no two historians tell the story the same way. However, it is clear that for the revolutionaries, Marie Antoinette's significance was mainly powerfully symbolic. She and the people around her seemed to represent everything that was wrong with the monarchy and the Second Estate. They appeared to be tone deaf, out of touch, disloyal, along with her allegedly treasonous behavior. Writers and pamphleteers frequently accused the queen of adultery and discussed the adultery nature as well. And they were self-interested. What Marie Antoinette was actually like was beside the point. The image of the queen was far more influential than the woman herself. So unfortunately, her legacy, don't know much about her life or her personally or anything that she really stood for herself, like what she believed in. She ended up being this figure of hate, this figure of everything that was wrong with France. So the spending, the debt, the taxes, saying no to this new system. She was just this easy to pick on figure, and now we just have this image of her in our history and in our life, and from this time period. What she was really like, or what she really stood for, don't know. But we know that she is part of what was wrong with France, not solely by herself, not solely her fault, but because the people needed someone to blame and someone to lean on and just have a figure to get all their hatred out towards. She became that, and it's rather unfortunate, but at the same time, needed to be done, question mark? Who knows? So that's Marie Antoinette. Never said the let them eat cake line, proven that it was not her per se. It was something written in a chronicles beforehand by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Wasn't actually her. So there we go, debuff that, and now we see this is her life and what we remember her as, this figurehead of hatred and everything that was wrong with France in the 18th century. Crazy history, crazy life. I hope this was at least somewhat interesting despite some of the bumps and stumbles through my reading and little disruptions here and there. But Marie Antoinette was always someone fascinating to me, and I hope someone watching this is interested by her and her history and her life. So let me know what you think, and next time I do a unique history, we might look at Robespierre, because this French Revolution and this part of history is so fascinating, and he is the figure of the revolution. He became one of the leaders, one of the extremists in the Jacobean government that I would love to explore and explain to you guys, because oh my goodness, wild, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you everyone for listening to this chapter of Unique History, Marie Antoinette. Let me know what you think below, and next time we do this in a couple of weeks, we will look at Robespierre and his role in the revolution, because whole doggy, it's a lot, and I can't wait. So take care out there, stay golden, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.